Middle Eastern crude. Analysts are warned that if the conflict spreads, maritime choke points could become more volatile, prolonging disruptions into the second half of this year. For key ports like Singapore, the challenge is maintaining efficiency and resilience in these uncertain times. Patrick Falk, Al Jazeera, Singapore.
A growing number of Filipinos in the Middle East are seeking to leave the region as the conflict escalates. People from the Philippines form the backbone of the workforce in many countries, particularly in the Gulf. Millions of migrant workers from the rest of Asia are also in harm's way. Barnaby Lowe has the story from Manila.
Manila's international airport may not be a hub, but it is the gateway for millions of Filipinos who are the lifeblood of the global workforce and the Philippine economy. Their annual remittances account for nearly 10% of the country's GDP. And about a quarter of them are in the Middle East, now caught in the widening conflict there. One of the first expats to be injured by retaliatory strikes by Iran was a Filipino worker in Kuwait's international airport, and one of the first killed was a Filipina caregiver in Israel who was assisting her ward to a bomb shelter when a shrapnel hit her. Now, her family has requested that her remains be brought back home, but officials here say that may not be possible for a while.
In due time, OFW Mary Ann will be home safely. But in the meantime, Admin PY and myself sent our teams already over to Pangasinan and for the family. And then our teams naman also in Tel Aviv are with hand-holding the husband through this difficult process.
In fact, no homecoming is expected at this airport anytime soon, at least from the Middle East. That much Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. admits, while also assuring the nearly 2.5 million Filipinos in the Middle East that there are teams on the ground already getting ready for eventual evacuation of those who've requested to be repatriated, and there is a growing number of them whenever that becomes possible.
Our assessment is that it would be too dangerous to charter flights. There are suggestions to evacuate by land, but that could also be risky because we're talking about an active combat zone. People could be caught in crossfires or cars could be bombed.
And it's not just Filipinos. Across the Middle East, there are more than 24 million migrant workers, many from South and Southeast Asia. And so, for instance, Pakistan, Thailand, and Indonesia have urged their citizens to shelter in place. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has directed all departments to assist Indian nationals. Vietnam and Nepal have suspended the deployment of workers, and here in the Philippines, a limited deployment ban remains in place. Barnaby Lowe, Al Jazeera, Manila.
The history of US intervention in foreign countries suggests those operations often fail to meet their policy goals. Well, US President Donald Trump has said he expects the operation in Iran to be over in a matter of weeks, but can he achieve his goal? John Hendren has more from Washington.
The American bombs landing on Iranian soil follow a long history of US intervention abroad. President Donald Trump might have been encouraged by the January success of the mission to capture Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro.
And they're going to make more money than they've ever made before. We'll help build their country again.
We have to make a judgment as to...
President John Kennedy learned the hard way that interventions can go badly and quickly wrong, as he explained after the failed attempt to overthrow Cuba's government at the Bay of Pigs in 1961.
Victory has 100 fathers and defeat is an orphan.
The U.S. has intervened in Latin America dozens of times before and after JFK's speech. Since then, more often than not, it wasn't the initial invasion where things went wrong. A lesson learned in Vietnam in the 1960s and 70s, and more recently in Afghanistan and Iraq, where George W. Bush prematurely declared mission accomplished in 2003, with fighting dragging on for years after. The lesson of U.S. interventions has often been that the power projected by the Pentagon often succeeds in leading to regime change. It's after that that things can get tricky. In recent decades, historian Max Friedman has watched one American president after another fail to learn that lesson.
And the United States has demonstrated time and again that we have the military strength, we have the capacity to smash up states that we don't like or we don't like how they're governed. but then to build a replacement that will be on balance better for the people who live there, for the people in the wider region. That's a rarer case that we don't encounter, and we don't seem to have a recipe for it.
Those remembered as successes were often the shortest. The U.S. invasion of Grenada in 1983, Panama in 1989, and the first Gulf War in Kuwait in 1990.
Aggression is defeated. The war is over.
Put there by...
That might explain the time frame set for Iran by President Trump.
We projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
Time and tactics will reveal whether this war keeps to Trump's schedule and meets his goal of regime change. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Well, it is just gone 10 GMT. That is 12:30 p.m. in Tehran. You're watching Al Jazeera's extensive coverage of the conflicts between the US, Israel and Iran. I'm Tom McRae. Israel has carried out a new wave of attacks across Lebanon in its rapidly escalating conflict with Hezbollah. Over the past hour, Israel has struck multiple areas in Beirut's southern suburbs. It says a Hezbollah infrastructure. But a hotel near the capital and a residential complex in the east have also been hit. Tehran has come under intense Israeli bombardment also after the Israeli military announced a broad wave of attacks. Since Saturday, the US and Israeli attacks have killed more than 800 people. And Iran has launched multiple strikes on Israel, including in the Tel Aviv area. Israel's defense minister says whoever is picked to be Iran's next supreme leader will be, quote, a target for elimination. Iran is still carrying out attacks across the Gulf region. In Dubai, a drone strike hit the US consulate, sparking a fire. Saudi Arabia has confirmed there's been another attempted attack on its Ras Tanura oil refinery. And Kuwait says it's dealing with a wave of Iranian missiles and drones in its airspace. And in Washington, the Trump administration is under fire from Democrats. They say his justifications for attacking Iran are falling short. The White House officials briefed Congress in a bid to get politicians on board, though it's done little to convince senators right across the aisle that a war on Iran is necessary. Well, we are live in Tehran, Ramallah and Doha, but first we're going to head to Beirut and speak to Zaina Hodder, who is there. And Zaina, over the last, 3 or maybe even 4 hours now, there have been multiple strikes. Can you just talk us through exactly what's been hit, what damage has been inflicted?
Well, Israel continuing with its military offensive. This latest confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah is only escalating. The Israeli military also expanding and broadening the scope of its attacks. In the early hours of the morning, we saw 5 Israeli airstrikes come in, level 5, at least 5 residential buildings in Beirut's southern suburbs, the cluster of neighborhoods behind me. The Israeli military is saying that it is targeting infrastructure belonging to Hezbollah. Now, while those strikes came with prior warning, overnight Israel carried out strikes without warning, targeting a hotel in Hazmiyeh. That's a suburb of outside the traditional strongholds of Hezbollah. So this is really putting more and more pressure on Hezbollah and on the Lebanese state, but Hezbollah also remaining defiant, continuing to claim cross-border attacks, saying that they are targeting military positions across the border.
And we're also keeping a very close eye on the south of the country too, Zaina. The Israeli army has been calling its actions there a tactical forward defence. But can you just explain what that actually means? What is happening there right now?
Well, the Israeli defense minister yesterday authorized the army to take control of additional positions inside Lebanon. I can confirm that the Israeli army has advanced at least a kilometer from 7 positions. So they've advanced into Lebanese territory from 7 positions along the border. Now, even though there's a ceasefire in place, the past 2 years, what we have been witnessing every now and then are these incursions into Lebanese territory. At times, the Israeli military abducts civilians. Other times, they detonate homes. But the timing of the latest incursion is raising concern because it comes just hours after the Israeli defense minister ordered the army to take control of more positions. Already, the Israeli army controls up to 10 square kilometers of territory. It is something that Hezbollah has been saying to the Lebanese state, if you're unable to push Israeli forces to withdraw back, back to south of the blue line, then how do you expect us to surrender our weapons? And this really has been a problem for the Lebanese state because the occupying these hilltop positions really is in violation of the ceasefire agreement. So there's pressure coming from the ground, from the skies, Israeli warplanes flying over Beirut, the constant sound of buzzing of Israeli drones, and their telephone threats. People in some neighborhoods in Beirut are receiving phone calls telling them to evacuate their buildings. So there's this chaos and a lot of tension and panic in Lebanon on where this conflict is heading.
Okay, thank you so much for all of that, Zaina Zanahota, for us there in Beirut. Well, staying with this aspect of the story, we're joined now by Haneen Saeed, who is the Lebanese Minister of Social Affairs. She joins us from Beirut. We heard from our correspondent just there saying that pressure is coming from all directions for those living in Lebanon right now. Can you just give us an idea of what it is like living under the threat and effect of these strikes from Israel?
Good morning, Tom. Thank you for this opportunity. Of course, it is not a good situation. People are worried. Unfortunately, to say that we've lived through this before, and memory is still fresh. Not too long ago, less than 2 years, Lebanon and the Lebanese people went through this period of uncertainty, of waking up daily to sounds of course, either drones or explosions. And we are, as a government, mobilized. All ministries, all government agencies are mobilized. First, of course, at least at the level of my responsibility, is to provide shelter and food and supplies for the displaced people who are being displaced.
How big a project is that? We understand that there's been more than, I think, 16 forced evacuation orders, especially for those in the south. Many people have been displaced. How many people are we talking about at this point in time?
Right. So we're actually still getting the numbers, but let me tell you what we officially have registered in the shelters are 65,000 people as of this morning. And this is about, they're being accommodated in some 350 shelters around the country. Now, there are more people, of course, displaced than those that are in the shelters. There are those that are still on the road, in the sense that they haven't decided whether they want to go in shelter. They still think they can go back to their homes, although we are, of course, encouraging them to shelter. So it's possible there is anywhere around maybe another 20,000 that are somehow either on the road or have gone to their families and friends. And we are now in the process of registering them, so we will have more accurate counts. Now, in the last war, there was a much higher number. There were numbers talking about 1.2 million who were displaced in the first instance and the like. We're not, of course, there, and hopefully we will not reach that number.
Right. Obviously, this isn't going to be over anytime soon. From what we know from Donald Trump, he's saying it's going to last up to a month, if not longer. We heard from an Israeli military spokesperson just in the last hour saying that there's not going to be any let-up on Hezbollah in Lebanon. Can you just give us an idea of what your long-term plan is here?
Well, as a government, we took a decision 2 days ago in an emergency cabinet meeting, which basically said that all military activities of the Hezbollah is illegal. It's outside of it's unlawful. and the army is fully deployed. All security forces are fully deployed, and of course, the long-term plan is establishing the authority of the state on all of its territories. Of course, we are also trying all diplomatic efforts. This is a key part of getting stability, getting the country back. So diplomatic path and asserting the position of the state, including the army, all across the territories.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there for the moment, but we really do appreciate your time. That is Haneen Saeed, the Lebanese Minister of Social Affairs for us out of Beirut.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Tehran now, where Al Jazeera's Mohammed Val has been standing by, and there's, understand there's been another Israeli wave of broad strikes, as it describes it, there in the capital. Can you just give us an idea of what, if anything, has happened in the last hour or so?
Yes, in the last hour or so, there has been what the Israelis call the 10th wave of attacks against Iran. Tehran has been at the center of that, but also Karaj and Isfahan, both east and west of the capital, Tehran. There are reports of 5 people killed, and there are also reports of schools being hit in these attacks. So that's basically what we have so far. We don't have clarity about the specific nature of targets. That's something that takes time. But also, on the other hand, Iran, the Revolutionary Guard, has announced overnight the 16th and the 17th waves of attacks in what they call the True Promise 4 operation. That's their name for their part of this war. And they talk about a wide range of targets in Israel, including the headquarters of the Zionists, as they call the Zionist Army, the Ministry of War in Hekira, in the infrastructure, strategic infrastructure in Beni Barak, the military targets in Beit Tekva, and the military center of Jalil al-Gharbi. And they talk about effective, efficient action in this regard and the possibility to reach those places and damage them. The IRGC also, contrary to what the Americans say about the complete destruction of the Iranian Navy, they said their Navy operations are still ongoing and that they are reaching targets, American targets, 600 kilometers deep in the Indian Ocean. They are talking about the continuation of that type of activities. Revolutionary Guard has said it has launched simultaneous operations, fired 230 offensive drones at U.S. targets in U.S. bases in Ali El Salem in Kuwait and Arif Jan in Ali Salim in Kuwait and Arif Jan also in Kuwait. So they are talking about an endless amount of action and a long list of targets across the region, all showing that there is no baiting, there is no reduction of the firepower that is going out of Iran in terms of its reaction to this war.
Mohammed, we're also getting reports that the members of Iran's Assembly of Experts that have been tasked with choosing the new supreme leader say that they are close to a decision. Do you have any more information, and how soon could we hear?
Well, there is a lot of rumors and a lot of talk going around in social media here in the country, but there is no specific information. We have Ayatollah Mujtaba Hosseini. He's member of the Assembly of Experts. That's the highest source that has talked about it. And he said that there is no clear indication of how long the process will take, but the process is ongoing, and that once the preparations are finished, a new supreme leader will be elected. That takes, of course, voting. 2/3 of the 88 members of the Assembly of Experts voting on a new leader. If you want me to talk to you about the rumors, there are 2 names that are being circulated in the social media and so on, and that's Mujtaba Khamenei, son of the late supreme leader, and Hassan Rouhani, the former Iranian president. But these are just at the level of rumors so far, and there is no clarity with regards to that in terms of what the Iranian highest government members are saying.
Okay, thank you so much, Mohammed, for all of that. Mohammed Val in Tehran. Well, Israel has just issued evacuation orders in Lebanon. Noor O'Day is in Ramallah for us with the latest. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what you're learning regarding even more forced evacuation orders?
That's right, Tom. And these forced evacuation orders are quite dramatic. The Israeli army telling all the Lebanese residents of all of southern Lebanon, south of the Litani, to leave now immediately because they will not be safe. So the Israeli army wants to clear the southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River, of all civilians. These forced evacuation orders, as we've seen and as has been the pattern in Israeli military conduct, once these orders are issued, the Israeli army considers that those remaining in the areas will not be civilians and as such would be fair targets. Now that just means and signals that the Israeli army does intend to move ground troops into southern Lebanon, but this is a large chunk of the country, a large chunk of the south that had been declared free of Hezbollah weapons by the Lebanese government. This a marked escalation, Tom. That we're not just talking about bombardments from the air. We're not just talking about Israel going after Hezbollah. We're talking about ground invasion until the Litani River.
Which is a significant development. We've also heard from our correspondent in Tehran saying that Iran's working to pick a new supreme leader. Israel's defense minister says whoever is selected is going to be a target. Israel Katz saying on X, every leader appointed by the Iranian terror regime to continue and lead the plan to destroy Israel, to threaten the United States and the free world and the countries of the region, and to suppress the Iranian people will, quote, be an unequivocal target for elimination. He went on to say it does not matter what his name is or the place where he hides. Nor that is quite a remarkable statement there from Israel Katz, basically saying that we're going to hunt you down and get you regardless of who you are and regardless of international law.
Absolutely. And that is the framing, that is the selling point that Israel has been using, Tom, to justify this war against Iran. It wants to sell the idea that Iran, a sovereign country of more than 90 million people, is the same as a non-state actor, an armed group, an armed militia in Lebanon, Palestine, or elsewhere. And as such, it is dealing with the structure of government at the helm of government in Iran in the same manner. Now, this is important because there's a lot of doubt now being cast, especially in the U.S., which is crucial to the continuation of this war effort for Israel, about the reasons for the war, about the tactics of the war, and about the end game. There is widespread support in Israel for attacking Iran, but there are questions, real, credible, justifiable questions about the end game. You cannot bomb yourself, bomb a regime change into a country from the skies. But Benjamin Netanyahu has been clear. He doesn't just want to topple the government in Tehran. He wants to create a friendly Iran, a government in Iran that is pro-Israel, aligned with its policies, willing to cooperate with it without question about its policies of occupation elsewhere in the region. We'll have to wait and see whether that can pan out from the skies.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Noor, as always. Noor O'Day for us there in Ramallah. Iran has attacked targets in the region for a fourth night. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry spokesman says there's been another attempted attack on its Ras Tanura oil refinery. It is one of several energy facilities Iran has targeted in the past few days. Now, on Monday, a drone strike there caused a fire. Saudi Aramco's Ras Tanura is one of the world's largest oil refineries. In Dubai, a drone strike hit the US consulate. It caused a fire, but authorities say it was quickly contained. No injuries have been reported. We're going to go to Zain Basravi, who's in Doha for us. And Zain, if we can, first of all, if you can just update us, if possible, on Ras Tanura in Saudi Arabia. What, if any, damage was done there?
Well, from what we understand, Saudi Arabia says that it intercepted a drone attack targeting this huge refinery, the largest one in the Middle East. The statement says Saudi Arabia intercepted a drone attack targeting its massive Ras Tanura refinery. The Defense Ministry said this followed an earlier hit on the complex that was just 2 days ago. It just sit on the Gulf Coast, so it's not that far across the water from Iran, and has been targeted twice so far in the last 5 days since the war began. The statement goes on to say initial estimates indicate that the attack was carried out by a drone and did not result in any damage. And that's according to a ministry statement. So it seems that they did intercept it before it was able to cause any damage to the refinery, unlike a few days ago when there was a fire and it had to be shut down.
And obviously it is not just that refinery. There have been many more attacks right across the Gulf region. I guess many of the countries taking stock of this latest round of attacks by Iran.
That's correct. Today, day 5 of the war. Of course, last night we went to bed after these 2 ballistic missiles once again targeted Qatar. We heard them at around 8 p.m. local time. One of them was intercepted, but one of them, the ministry here did confirm, the Ministry of Defense confirmed it did strike Al Udeid Air Base. It took the Iranians about 4 days of trying to strike Al Udeid Air Base, where the CENTCOM, a U.S. CENTCOM, is headquartered, but they did manage to do it. Still no assessment of damage or details about the aftermath of that report, of that attack. But we also know earlier, just about an hour or so ago, the Kuwait Ministry of Defense said our armed forces are currently dealing with a batch of missiles and drones as well. So no let up in these ongoing attacks. Saudi Arabia earlier today said it hit a drone east of the country. That was after it shot down 2 ballistic missiles over the Al Khurj region. Now, this is where Prince Sultan Air Base is located, which has routinely hosted U.S. forces. And as these attacks carry on, we're hearing from the Foreign Ministry of Qatar when they are saying that these kinds of things simply threaten good faith and understanding, and the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs stressing the need for an immediate cessation of escalation and a return to the negotiating table. So despite these ongoing attacks, Qatar's government continues to say the same thing, that even though the violence is ongoing, this conflict will end at a negotiating table.
Okay, thank you so much, Zain. As always, Zain Basravi for us there in Doha. Well, in Iraq, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps says it's launched a series of drone attacks targeting a US military base in Erbil. The IRGC says it was part of what it described as 3 simultaneous operations, including strikes on 2 US military bases in Kuwait. Also in Iraq, there's been an attack on the headquarters of the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan. The exiled group is blaming Iran for launching drones at their camp. Now, Iran has designated Kurdish opposition groups as terrorist organisations. Okay, well, Ressel Surda joins us now. He's reported extensively from Iran. Can you just give us a sense of exactly what is going on here with Iraq? Can you just lay it out in really plain terms for people who might not know some of the history of that border region?
Indeed. So Iran is, when it comes to the ethnic and religious minorities, is an extremely diversified country. So we're talking about roughly around 93 million people in Iran. And then more than half of that population are made of the minorities. So we're talking about 8 to 9 million Kurds, around 4 million Arabs, and around 3 million Baluchs, and over 25 million of Azeris, there are Lurs, and many other ethnic groups. However, these ethnic tension mostly has been focused on 2 parts of Iran. One of them is Balochistan in the east of the country, and the other one is the Kurdish region of Iran in the western part of the country. And now that the IRGC, for the first time, saying that our ground forces were engaged in conducting the operations along the Iran-Iraqi border, where these Kurdish separatist groups are particularly stationed, is extremely important, because the main assessment, the risk assessment, one of the biggest risk that Tehran is seeing as for the coming weeks and months and potentially even years is that the US and Israel would like to destabilize Iran's borders and encourage these ethnic insurgency within Iran, starting particularly with the Kurds, arming them and then leading an internal insurgency. And that could spread to Baluch, then to Arabs, and eventually even to Azeris. And that could open the door for a civil war.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to ask about. I mean, how great is that risk? This destabilization in the region will lead to something along those lines, because that would be, I mean, obviously hugely significant, wouldn't it?
It mostly depends on how the central government is going to remain. So if Americans are up to an extremely weak central government that doesn't have the air forces, that doesn't have a meaningful military capacity, and that its economy is crashed, is paralyzed, and further isolated from the world, then the central government is going to struggle, having extreme difficulties of dealing with these ethnic insurgencies, with the remote areas. So if the central government is weak, how they are going to be able to control these minorities at the periphery of the country? So that's why it all depends how the central government is going to remain. But what we can see that as the USA is particularly going after Iran's missiles, aircrafts, military air bases, the radar systems, and so on, we understand that they want to leave an Iran that doesn't have a significant air force. And in that sense, I believe it is potentially going to be the issue that we are going to talk about maybe for years in Iran. I see a scenario that we have seen in Syria 2012 until end of 2024 potentially can be repeated in Iran.
We're also hearing that members of Iran's Assembly of Experts that have been tasked with choosing the next supreme leader could be potentially quite close to a decision. How significant is that they, move quickly through this process and find a successor?
It's very much important, because what Iran has lost by the killing of Ali Khamenei is beyond imagination. So for our audience, just Iran so far had two supreme leaders. The first one was Ayatollah Khomeini, who was a charismatic leader, and he was extremely popular, by the way. But when he became the supreme leader, just in a year, then a war erupted with Iraq, and it lasted 8 years. So he did not have the chance really to rebuild the state. But in '89, Ali Khamenei has been elected as the supreme leader, and he built the new Iran. So he is the builder and architect of the modern day Iran. All the institutions that you can imagine, all key figures that are running the country now, including the security, the economic bodies, and so on. So either has been shaped, appointed by Ali Khamenei, and now that guy is out of the picture, and Iranians, they have to be extremely quick to pick a leader that not to let the power vacuum to further destabilize the country. But one thing, as a final point, it is going to be the IRGC, the Iran's Revolutionary Guards, that are going to decide about who will be the country's next supreme leader. And I'm expecting it to come soon.
Okay, thank you so much, Ressel. We will talk to you, no doubt, in the coming hours as well. Ressel Serdar for us there. Well, Shael Benafrim is a senior geopolitical analyst at Atlas Global Strategies and a former Israeli diplomat. He says the timing of the attacks against Iran is rooted in domestic politics in the US and Israel. He spoke to my colleague Sarah Hirat a little earlier.
Netanyahu said that he's been trying to do this for 40 years. He doesn't hide it, and he's going to run on the elections probably pretty soon, saying that this was his great achievement if he manages to take out the Islamic Republic. The caveat is that the timing is somewhat convenient for Trump because of the Epstein scandal, and that's probably one of the reasons he agreed to go with it. Obviously, he had to say yes, but ultimately this is an Israeli initiative that has been going on for years to try to do this.
When you mention the Epstein files, you mean as a distraction away from that?
Yes. The current approval numbers for Trump are the worst they've ever been. Some of the worst this early in a term I can remember. And there's signs that the economy is going to get worse. So he really needs a distraction from that in the form of a war. And if you look at searches on Google for the Epstein files, they've plummeted since this started. So at least temporarily, it's succeeding. It's taking up Congress's time and it's taking up the media's time. So in that sense, it's also Trump's war. But it didn't have to be Iran. It could be something else as far as Trump's concerned.
That's interesting because, earlier today, Trump himself was saying that he might have forced Israel's hand into this war, sort of contradictory, if you like, what Marco Rubio had said. But look, if for any reason moving forward, the public increasingly puts pressure or even political pressure on Donald Trump to walk away from this or to de-escalate, what sort of leverage do you think the US could have or Trump could have on his ally, Benjamin Netanyahu, into persuading him, rather, to move away from that ambition when it comes to Iran?
The United States has over Israel theoretically is massive. All they would have to do is say that they're going to stop providing ammunition, that they're going to stop providing interceptors, theoretically in an abstract reality, that they could stop protecting them in the UN Security Council. There's so many things that Trump could do, but he's not going to do any of it. We don't exactly know why Netanyahu has this kind of hold over Trump. People thought that there'd be some independence that Trump would have from Netanyahu, but it's turned out to be quite the opposite. It's turned out that Netanyahu really controls Trump. And why did Trump say that? He said that because everyone is starting to look at Trump as sort of weak and easily influenced and easily led and a tool of Israel, especially in the right-wing circles that he takes very seriously.
Well, you're watching Al Jazeera's continuing coverage of the conflict between the US, Israel and Iran. I'm Tom McRae. Israel has issued new evacuation orders for Lebanon in its rapidly escalating conflict with Hezbollah. Over the past couple of hours, Israel has struck multiple areas in Beirut's southern suburbs, it says, a Hezbollah infrastructure. But a hotel near the capital and a residential complex in the east have also been hit. Tehran has come under intense bombardment after the Israeli military announced a broad wave of attacks. Since Saturday, the US and Israeli attacks have killed more than 800 people. And Iran has launched multiple strikes on Israel, including in the Tel Aviv area. Israel's defense minister says whoever is picked to be Iran's next supreme leader will be, quote, a target for elimination. Well, Iran has attacked targets in the Gulf region for a fourth day. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry spokesman says there's been another attempted attack on its Ras Tanura oil refinery. It's one of several energy facilities that Iran has targeted in the past few days. And in Dubai, a drone strike hit the US consulate, sparking a fire. And Kuwait says it's dealing with a wave of Iranian missiles and drones in its airspace. And in Washington, the Trump administration is under fire from Democrats. They say his justifications for attacking Iran are falling short. And the White House officials have briefed Congress in a bid to get politicians on board, but it's done little to convince Democratic senators that a war on Iran is necessary. The US president has said most of the officials Washington had considered potential new leaders of Iran have been killed. Now, Trump drew parallels with the operation in Venezuela, which ended with the capture of President Nicolas Maduro.
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody. But we have... Venezuela was so incredible because we did the attack and we kept government totally intact. And we have Delcy, who's been very good. We have the whole chain of command, and they've been, look, the relationship's been great. We've taken out 100 million barrels of oil already, and a big part of that goes to them, and a big part goes to us, and it's been great.
Well, to discuss all of this, we are joined now by several guests. Joining me in the studio is Zaidoun El-Kanani, a Middle East politics lecturer at Georgetown University in Qatar. In Tehran is Abbas Aslani, a senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. And in Vienna is Wolfgang Pusztai, a security policy and defence analyst. Thank you all very much for joining us. First, Abbas, I'm sure you were listening into what we just played from Donald Trump there, almost admitting that they don't know who at this point could potentially take over the supreme leadership there in Iran. How worrying is that from your perspective?
Well, the Iranian Assembly of Experts is trying to vote on the new leader, and they have been making consultations. However, convening in person is risky for them, and because, as it was stated by a member of the Assembly of Experts, you know, it's war condition, so that's why there has been quite a delay of few days. But they will be trying to elect a new leader as soon as possible. But, you know, the risk from the American and Israeli side exists, but there is a vacuum to fill in the country because the country has lost a leader who sat at the top of the hierarchy, and also high-ranking commanders were lost. So they need to compensate this situation in order to make sure that there is no political vacuum in the country. However, there is an interim leadership council in charge at the moment to lead the country through this transitional period. And this is quite a challenging time that the country needs to navigate through. And these, let's say, conflicting situation has made it a bit more difficult.
Okay, Wolfgang, do you agree with that assessment that there's a vacuum there in Iranian leadership at this point in time? And what does that mean? Because we've talked to some analysts and Iranian experts that say that the IRGC is actually the ones that are in control in terms of the military and what it's doing and who it's striking and its targets right now, and will effectively decide who next leads the country too.
I would say Khamenei was certainly a very powerful, a very influential, a very strong person. Nevertheless, there is always someone here to replace him. There is always a deputy, and the Iranian constitution always foresees a process to replace the leader. So this means the next person that will probably take over won't be as strong, won't be as powerful, won't be as influential as Khamenei was. With regard to the military structures, you can expect that those who were in charge were the best ones suited for the job. The deputies won't be fully up to the task. And if they are again killed, if the new leader is again killed, the weakness of the Iranian political and military command and control system will be even more evident.
Zaidoun, what do you make of all of this? I mean, as we heard Wolfgang say there, that whoever takes over next in Iran is not going to be as strong or as influential. What are the consequences of that?
Well, it also reflects the internal dynamics. We have different political divisions within Iran domestically. We have the variety of the different political opinions within the country, most significantly the opposition, which also has a variety of different opinions. But we also have the intra-elitist divisions, which we have noticed sometimes between the ruling elite, the supreme leader, the IRGC, the Basij, and even including a lot of different opinions between the religious establishment in Qum and the government in Tehran. However, the assassination of Khamenei, the former supreme leader, and the way he was assassinated in a very symbolic move by the US and the Israeli coordinated strikes indicates that this is definitely a major downfall in the symbolic power that has been presented by the Islamic Revolution or the Islamic Republic of Iran since 1979, which means there is a very strong possibility that the upcoming supreme leader, if there were to be one to be nominated in the coming days, given the current circumstances, will find it very hard to fill his shoes.
Abbas, Israel has said that it doesn't matter who takes over next in Tehran. They're going to be a target that Israel is going to go after. I mean, regardless of international law, how worrying is that?
You know, we have been seeing the wave of attacks coming from the Israeli and American sides have been mostly targeting the civilian infrastructure. And so it seems that there is no, let's say, attention from the American side on this matter, as well as other, global community, including the Western countries. And but in the meantime, we are seeing also from Iranian side that they have been departing from their past, let's say, playbook that they used to target American military bases in the region. But this time, this goes beyond that, and they also have included those facilities used by American forces in the region or anything which is related to American presence in the regional countries to make sure that the cost they are paying will be heavier. And this is part of a game which deals with the deterrence matter. So both sides are trying to break the model. The US and Israel want to establish a Lebanon style model toward Iran to come and attack the country now and then. But Iran wants to stop this process. But as we speak, there is a new round of, let's say, efforts by the American and Israeli side to somehow engage and include, let's say, armed groups, separatists and terrorist groups to intervene and to create a friction for the Iranian government. And early Iranian intelligence ministry said that they have arrested a armed cell in the capital who were about to somehow conduct a terrorist operation. So this is going to be a new challenge or a new phase in the ongoing conflict.
Okay. Wolfgang, obviously, this isn't just about Iran, Israel, and the US. By my count, Iran's now fired back on at least 9 countries across the region. We've seen Greek fighter jets in the skies above Cyprus now, European leaders getting involved as well. I mean, how worried are you that this is going to escalate beyond anyone's control?
I would say Iran's leadership, whoever these people might be, has no interest whatsoever to get some additional opponents. They neither have an interest in getting some bombs from Qatar or from the United Arab Emirates, nor to be bombed from UK or from France. So it is not in the Iranian interest to extend the war over the region that is currently affected. I don't expect them to attack military and civilian targets to a larger extent in the Gulf states. I don't expect them to attack and strike targets in the European Union, let alone in a NATO country. This would not make sense for them from a simple point of view. The more countries they have as an enemy, the less likely is their survival. Their strategy has 3 main elements: missile strikes on Israel, attacking American, as you said, facilities and interests in the region, and exert indirect pressure on the US through the Gulf states, through the Europeans and others, but not to drag other countries directly into the war.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll have to leave it there for the moment. Wolfgang, Abbas and Zaydoun, we do appreciate your time. Well, at least 100 people are missing after an attack on an Iranian ship off the coast of Sri Lanka. That is according to authorities there. Officials say 32 critically wounded sailors have been rescued. Search for the rest of the crew is still ongoing. Now, the frigate issued a distress call in the early hours of Wednesday. It's not yet clear if this attack is part of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Well, Spain's Prime Minister has doubled down on his criticism of the attack on Iran by the US and Israel, warning the conflict risked playing Russian roulette with the lives of millions. Pedro Sanchez was responding to US President Donald Trump's threats to cut trade with Madrid over its position on the conflict. Now, tensions between the 2 NATO allies are on the rise after Sanchez described the bombing of Iran as reckless and illegal. He's also barred US aircraft involved in the operation from using Spanish naval and air bases.
We should learn from history, and we can't play Russian roulette with the destiny of millions of people. The powers involved in this conflict should immediately stop the hostilities and rely on dialogue and diplomacy. And the rest of us should act in a coherent way, defending the same values that we defend when we talk about Ukraine, Gaza, Venezuela and Greenland.
Well, Sonia Gallego joins us now from London, and this is the strongest condemnation yet from a European leader. Obviously, no love lost between Sanchez and Donald Trump.
I think that would be a very fair assessment. The 2 men seem to be diametrically opposed to each other in terms of where their values lie. And of course, Pedro Sanchez made this absolutely explicit in his response to Trump's comments in the White House yesterday, coming down firmly on the side of what he calls international law as well. Those comments that he made were amounted to really some of the strongest yet that we've seen from a European leader. Pedro Sanchez, of course, underlining what he says is the illegality of the military actions there, and that there had to be a return to diplomatic means. This is what Spain wanted to return to, what Spain's focus is on as well. And he stated that one illegality could not be cured by another illegality as well. As he said, that's how great disasters occur. So really quite a full-throated reaction from the Spanish Prime Minister there as well. But there are a couple of strategic issues as well. There is, of course, the issue of the US wanting to use the bases in Spain for its military operations, something which the Spanish government has completely denied. That obviously has really riled President Trump. And it's certainly not going to be the end of his criticism of the Spanish Prime Minister as well, considering that Spain is also has one of the lowest defense budget spendings in NATO as well, something that Trump has been very dismissive and critical of.
Yeah, indeed. Sonia, you've reported extensively from Spain. Can you just give us an idea of what the likely responses from the public there? Are they going to be on board with their Prime Minister's stance?
Well, there are going to be two issues here, and that's, first of all, there is the public response as well. Pedro Sanchez's response will be considered in a positive light as well. President Trump is by no means, he's certainly not a popular figure in Spain, so this is going to cut through publicly as well. It's going to be received well. However, there is also going to be the political response. The right-wing opposition is going to say that this, or certainly has already been saying that this is kind of a reckless response to a key ally of Spain at a time when Europe is in a particularly sensitive moment, especially when it comes to defense. Of course, Spain has those bases which the US wants to use as well. But there is also another issue. Spain is a prime entry point for Europe of liquefied natural gas. It is the largest holder of it here. That is crucial to European energy security supplies. So when Trump talks about stopping all trade with Spain, that's going to have repercussions. But of course, that is going to be something that the entire bloc is going to be involved in as well. But for Pedro Sanchez, this puts him also in a weakened position if it's going to damage that sense of that European energy supply as well.
Indeed, obviously a precarious position for him at the moment. Sonia Gallego in London, we really do appreciate it. Well, authorities on the Mediterranean island of Cyprus have closed the airspace above Larnaca International Airport after detecting what they say was a suspicious object. On Sunday, an Iranian-made drone caused minor damage at a UK military base on the island. Another 2 drones were shot down on Monday. John Saropoulos joins us from Limassol in southern Cyprus. Now, John, understand that Greek jets have also been in the skies in the last couple of hours. What exactly is the latest there?
Hello, Tom. The Greek jets were launched this morning to find out whether there was a threat to Cyprus from an object in the airspace of Lebanon coming towards Cypriot airspace. In the event, we've been told that they have shut down that object, presumably a drone. We haven't been given details, and that will mark the first engagement of European Union forces in this theater of the Iran-US-Israeli war. The jets were sent here early on Monday by Greece, part of a contingent of 4 jets to deal precisely with such threats. And they are accompanied by 2 Greek frigates, one of them right now in the port of Limassol being revictualled. We're told also that French forces are on the way, German forces and British forces, all of this part of an EU-centred response to support Cyprus in a major security crisis, Cyprus not being part of NATO and requiring an EU response. Earlier today, we were told by the government spokesperson here on Cyprus that its airspace was not in fact closed, but that two aircraft were kept in a circling formation above the airport in order to give those F-16 jets operational space, and that it was the decision of one of the pilots to return back to his point of origin, which was Athens. We've now heard that that plane is back on its way to Cyprus in order to deliver those passengers here. But it was a temporary measure, not an actual closure of airspace, according to the government spokesperson here, Tom. There is a broader effort on the part of Cypriot authorities not only to provide the security needed on a substantive basis for people here. They're advising people to have go bags ready so that they can evacuate their homes, go to shelters such as schools, churches, monasteries, and so on. But they are also trying to calm people and reassure them that life can go on as normal. In this strange hybrid psychology, the island is both preparing for the worst and also attempting to carry on as normal. And this is the report we filed earlier on how citizens here are dealing with that.
Operations resumed at Britain's military base in Akrotiri on Tuesday. An Iranian-made Shahed drone struck a hangar on Sunday, and 2 more drones were shot down into the sea on Monday. The incidents prompted authorities to move about 1,000 people out of a nearby village, but the local mayor told us there are no contingency plans.
We need to increase the number of shelters in the area. We need to have an early warning system, and we have to have in place a number of plans to evacuate, because as it stands, we don't have something in place right now.
Savas Loizidis was one of 24 who decided to stay. He showed me his pool, which he plans to convert into a bomb shelter.
My wife and I were in our bedroom shortly after midnight on Sunday when we heard an explosion. We sent our 6-year-old and 3-year-old to their grandmother, and my parents went to a local monastery for shelter.
People here say the island needs help, both with its security and crisis response measures. And since it isn't a NATO member, Cyprus is looking to Europe.
Although life appears to go on as normal, Cypriots know they are vulnerable. The island is the EU's easternmost territory. It lies just 170 kilometers from the coast of Lebanon. Cyprus has said it will not get involved militarily in the US and Israel's war with Iran. Instead, it has sought air defenses from its EU partners.
And that help began to arrive on Monday in the shape of 4 Greek F-16 fighter jets. Greece's newest warship, the frigate Kimon, delivered from shipyards just 2 months ago, and another Greek frigate are due this week. Their task is to track incoming drones and missiles and shoot them down. France, too, has said it will provide anti-drone and anti-missile systems, and Britain is sending a warship. The EU doesn't have a collective defense agreement like NATO, but this conflict might bring it about. John Psaropoulos, Al Jazeera, Limassol, Cyprus.
Well, President Donald Trump announced the United States is at war with Iran on social media. That's also where his old views about what he thought of a war on Iran are resurfacing. Now, social media is also revealing how members of Trump's national security team have changed their stance too. Here's Al Jazeera's Phil Lavelle in Washington.
American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people.
That is how Americans find out that they are at war, or at least that's how it used to be. Remember, we're in the year 2026 now, and things are very different.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
That came on social media. It is a medium that President Trump loves. Across X and Truth Social, that's the platform that he owns, he reaches more than 120 million followers. It is the age of announcements by algorithm, policies on podcasts. But remember, the internet is forever. There is always a tweet, as some say. Case in point, the president's past posts, like this one, 2011. In order to get elected, Barack Obama will start a war with Iran. Remember, it's an election year here now, too, because the midterms are in November. And then there is this.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective.
Vice President J.D. Vance is also a prolific poster and podcast guest, touching on this very issue before the election.
Our interest, I think, very much is in not going to war with Iran, right? It would be a huge distraction of resources. It would be massively expensive to our country.
There he was in the Situation Room with Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard as those strikes began. She once ran to be leader of the Democrats, and also online you can see she sold T-shirts opposing any war with Iran as recently as 2020. Now, posts are flying up, eager to catch the president's eyes and ears. Some from his own party, furiously trying to turn him away from action. Republican Thomas Massie says, I am opposed. This is not America first. Former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene says Trump, Vance, Tulsi, all of us campaigned on no more foreign wars and regime change. Even the late influencer Charlie Kirk, nearly 6 months after he was murdered, Republicans are now reminding Trump of his views on regime change.
Okay, that sounds good, but that's pathologically insane. I'm sorry, it is.
But the president is also getting a huge amount of support online as well. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham calling Netanyahu and Trump the modern-day Roosevelt and Churchill. Senator Tom Cotton saying it was right to act. Even Democrat John Fetterman saying President Trump has been willing to do what is right and necessary to produce real peace in the region. Ultimately, nobody knows how long this war will last, when the US will deem mission accomplished. For the best indication, you could do worse than keeping an eye on social media. Phil Lavelle, Al Jazeera, Washington.